In the grand theater of fiction, where villains are often just shadows for heroes to punch, there are those few who burn with a light of their own, a cold, dark, ambition-fueled star. To me, Mannimarco is one such celestial malignancy, a figure born in Altmer in the forgotten mists of the First Era, whose potential was so vast he was whisked away by the Psijic Order itself. It was there, in the heart of magical discipline, that I believe his prodigious talent as a mage twisted into a morbid fascination with the ultimate taboo, necromancy. When I think of Mannimarco, I see him standing shoulder to shoulder with the most captivating villains I've ever encountered, the serpentine genius of Orochimaru, the fractured soul of Voldemort, the brilliant mischief of Loki. What truly makes these figures resonate with me is their sheer, unadulterated talent. They are rivals to the greatest powers in their own universes, capable of feats that would make heroes tremble. They don't stumble into darkness, they stride into it, choosing the forbidden path out of sheer spite, ambition, and the realization that they can. It's this choice that, in my opinion, births the most compelling narratives. To try and capture the essence of Mannimarco in a single breath would be a fool's errand, so allow me to break down his story, to piece together the mosaic of the King of Worms, so that we might better understand the shadow he casts. To truly grasp the magnitude of Mannimarco's fall, I think we first have to understand the heights from which he fell. The Psijic Order, in my estimation, is one of the most formidable magical organizations in Tamriel's history. I mean, when a living god like Sotha Sil was once an honorary member, it's safe for me to say that no other guild has ever concentrated such awesome power in one place. It's been suggested that the power they wield comes not from Magicka as we know it, but from the manipulation of nature itself. This, to me, is a fascinating distinction. It could very well mean they practice magic in a way that echoes the old Elnafey, those divine at Ada who are the very bones of Mundus, nature personified. So, while their methods might seem similar, deriving power from Aetherius, the way they draw upon it feels fundamentally different and more profound to me. Some of the Order's achievements, I find, are just staggering in their scale. The idea that they can move the entire island of Artaeum at will, or phase it out of existence to avoid invasion, is mind-boggling. I believe their occasional centuries-long disappearance from history is a deliberate choice, their way of stepping back from the world's chaos. Their destruction of King Orgnum's fleet with a controlled storm in the Third Era clearly demonstrates a power to command the weather over a vast area. It was into this world of immense power that the now famous Vanus Galerion, founder of the Mages Guild, arrived with an Altmer soothsayer named Hylian. I find Vanus's backstory incredibly poignant. Born as Trectus, he was the son of a serf, essentially a slave. His father taught both himself and Vanus to read, but when they were discovered by their owner, Lord Gyrnas, the price was horrific. His father was hanged, but Vanus managed to escape. Eventually taken in by traveling singers who brought him to Artaeum, where the Magister Aekisis saw his potential and took him as a pupil. And just like that, he joined the Psijic Order. Here, in this crucible of power, Vanus met Mannimarco, a fellow student. It seems Mannimarco was also identified by the Psijics at a young age. It's never been clear exactly when Mannimarco was born, though it said he came from royal Altmeri blood, a detail that, for me, adds another layer of mystery to his origins. The two became great friends, mastering the mystic arts together. I'm not entirely sure why, but Vanus Galerion himself calls him a brilliant novice in the book Artaeum Lost, which tells me his incredible talents must have been obvious from the very beginning. The way Galerion speaks about Mannimarco makes me feel they truly grew up together in the Order, like they were novices side by side. Honestly, it's no surprise to me that they were competing from the start. With a setup like that, we all know it's bound to end in tragedy. At that time, I believe Vanus Galerion and Mannimarco were without a doubt the most brilliant students in all of Artaeum. But their paths diverged so dramatically. While Galerion, with what was described as a light and warm heart, used his gifts wisely and honorably, Mannimarco turned to the dark arts, his dark and cold heart slowly being corrupted by them. In their own ways, I see both Galerion and Mannimarco as critics of the Psijic Order. Galerion, I think, always wanted to bring magic to the people, to democratize the Order's knowledge. Mannimarco, on the other hand, seems to have taken the Order's isolationism to its logical, albeit selfish, conclusion. Galerion's belief was that if the Psijics were separate from Mundus, they shouldn't be bound by its cares or laws. To me, even the grave and faithful counsel the Psijics offered came from a place of superiority, treating those they advised as lesser men. Mannimarco's perspective, as I interpret it, was simply one of supreme indifference to what others thought or what was considered right.
You're a greater fool than I thought.
You tainted the Thapora Tower. You're worse than a murderer.
Pathetic. Do you expect Artaeum to bind me here? No! He'll simply banish me from the island.
That won't be enough. You're a beast, Mannimarco. A beast that needs to be caged.
Of course you're right. And once I reach the mainland, I'll show the world just how right you are. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ritual to complete. Now, to my masterwork. If Artaeum does not see the genius of my work, he can rot with the rest of them.
He seemed to view his methods purely as a means to an end, without any moral attachment. But after many years, Galerion made a horrifying discovery. Mannimarco was using mysticism to manipulate souls and the dead. Disgusted by this profane act, Vanus confronted his old friend beneath the Sepura Tower.
I don't get it! What happened to make you like this? Why are you doing it?
He pleaded with Mannimarco to repent, but in my view, it was already too late. His pleas were utterly ignored. Mannimarco and his like-minded students then left Artaeum, their exile self-imposed. Eventually, after continued disagreements with the Order, though they all hated necromancy, Galerion also left Artaeum. He was driven by his dream to share the wonders of magic with everyone. Galerion, of course, went on to establish the Mages Guild, an institution that, I believe, spread magical knowledge far wider than the Psijic Order ever did. After his exile, it seems to me that Mannimarco became obsessed, seeking out every lost secret of the necromantic arts he could find. I'm talking about things like how dragon priests controlled their draugr, ancient Iliad tablets on summoning spirits, and even the legendary Crimson Book of Skulls, a tome that the great Shalador himself was thought to have destroyed. Following the plane meld, Galerion, in what I see as a final, epic confrontation, led an army of mages and lamp knights to a cursed mountain to settle things with Mannimarco.
Now, ancient enemies band together. Old ambitions rekindled.
There, Galerion's forces were met by an equally powerful army of necromancers, both sides poised for a climactic battle. As they clashed, the mountain lit up with lightning and frost. The necromancers summoned hordes of undead, only to see them battered by streams of light from the battle midges. It was during this battle that Galerion had a realization. Mannimarco was no longer truly alive. He had transformed himself into a lich, achieving a twisted form of immortality. For a long time, it was believed Mannimarco had died in that fight, and though Galerion himself was tragically killed, Mannimarco clung to his undeath, ensuring the practice of necromancy would endure. Mannimarco's followers were either killed or scattered, and the victory secured the legacy of Galerion and his Mages Guild. But in a final, cruel twist that I find truly vile, Mannimarco raised Galerion from the dead to serve for a time as one of his worm thralls. We know Mannimarco was around during the Middle Dawn and was expelled from the Order around that time, which to me suggests he was a member for over 1,000 years. The lore has always been a bit inconsistent, in my opinion, on how long elves live. Morrowind seems to imply that it's very rare for Myr to live past 100, and that Telvanni elders use forbidden necromancy for their longevity. But then in the Tribunal DLC, we learn Berenzia, who isn't a necromancer, is over 400 years old and looks maybe middle-aged at worst. It's said Mannimarco experienced the most catastrophic of the dragon breaks, the Middle Dawn, which spanned over 1,000 years in the First Era. For me, it's entirely plausible for a mortal to reach an age of 1,030 years. Just look at Dvaithfur from Morrowind. That elf is over 4,000 years old, and he's a Dunmer, not an Altmer. And he did it all through sheer magical mastery, possibly using necromancy to preserve himself, as many Telvanni are rumored to do. If a Dunmer can hit 4,000 without becoming a Lich, then I believe an Altmer can naturally reach 1,030 years. Granted, a large chunk of that was the Middle Dawn Dragon Break, but that's still an incredible amount of time to be studying magic. I think this puts him in the same league as Dvaithfur and the Tribunal in terms of sheer longevity and power. To really get inside Mannimarco's head and understand his achievements, I feel we have to first understand the dark craft he was so obsessed with. Different cultures have their own ideas about what necromancy is. In its broadest sense, I understand it as any kind of soul manipulation. Technically, we could classify it under the Conjuration school of magic, since both involve summoning spirits and drawing on Oblivion's power. However, I think necromancy is more commonly understood to mean manipulating mortal souls and reanimating their corpses. This is typically done by binding a soul to a physical form that the necromancer has prepared. I've always wondered why we see so many skeletons among the undead, but fewer zombies and almost no revenants. It seems the longer a body is dead, the weaker its original owner's claim on it becomes. A spirit can apparently stay tied to its remains for days, weeks, or even years, which I think probably depends on the person's willpower in life. The shorter that time, the more likely the spiritual connection still exists, a wise, or perhaps even ethical. Necromancer doesn't want to fight for control of their creation, especially not with an angry spirit trying to get back into the world. It seems the best approach is to ensure the soul has departed before the reanimation starts. Because even if the necromancer were to win that spiritual battle, it's what I would call a cruel victory, tormenting a spirit on its way to its final rest. So why is this important? In my view, it's crucial for understanding Mannimarco's motives and his actions. This gives us a hint about what he's aiming for in his attempts to mantle Molag Bal and his role as the Lich King. Another concept I believe we need to explore to truly understand Mannimarco is that of liches. Leeches are undead necromancers who have mastered Lichdom, what I consider the most sophisticated form of undeath. Many in the Elder Scrolls universe have tried to become a Lich. But ascending to Lichdom is an incredibly risky process, and it seems to me that it's unique for each necromancer who attempts it, in terms of the power needed, the power gained, and the time it takes. According to notes from Gulveig the Ascendant, someone who attempted this transformation, it requires extraordinary willpower, deep necromantic knowledge, a powerful magical relic, and a large number of living souls. The necromancer casts a powerful spell on their subjects, using the relic as a focus. The spell is designed to steal souls in an incredibly painful way. And this, I believe, is intentional for the ritual to succeed. The soul must be torn from its body as painfully as possible, though the exact reason for this remains uncertain. Collecting and torturing souls in this manner is said to be a critical part of the ascension. This idea seems to be supported by Mannimarco's own studies on the soul shriven, which I'll get into later. The first element, as I see it, is the sheer will to force your own body past death. Without this ultimate mental power, the transformation can't even begin. Few have the courage for even this first step. I'm sure many falter, and are lost when the pain and horror overwhelm their willpower. Essentially, you'd have to will yourself to die while keeping your consciousness intact. And in that tiny moment, before your consciousness fades, you have to perform necromancy on yourself with your own fleeting soul. I mean, that is definitely not something a normal person could ever pull off, and even with the greatest will, you'd still need profound necromantic knowledge. Willpower provides the force, but I believe knowledge is what focuses that will and guides the transformation. Becoming a lich isn't just simple necromancy on yourself. You have to perform a perfect necromancy where the body, its original soul, and consciousness are all perfectly aligned. In my opinion, only the most intelligent and daring necromancers can delve deep enough into forbidden lore to gather the spells needed for Lichdom. Another key part of becoming a lich is transferring the soul into a physical object. While Tamrielic folklore acknowledges this, I think it often perpetuates the myth that a lich can be killed by destroying that object. The truth seems to be that the necromancer is only dependent on the object during the transference, the duration of which can vary. Once the transference is complete and the soul has left the body, the ascension is finished, and the physical object becomes irrelevant. Then, the lich is born, a corpse reanimated by the very soul it had in life. If, however, the object is lost or destroyed before the transference is done, the ascension fails, and the necromancer dies instantly. Necromancers have been known to perform a nearly week-long ritual where they create a special hourglass called the Sands of Resolve to hold their soul. It's said that Mannimarco was the first lich to do this, though this is debated. But if we are to believe it, then we have to acknowledge the immense knowledge he possessed and the willpower it took to do something that had never been done before, which was undoubtedly a massive risk. To me, this would make him the creator of Lichdom and rightfully the Lich King, at least in a true necromantic sense, because there are dragon priests who have done something similar. Unlike necromancers, these leeches are sustained by transferring life energy after death. Draugr in Nordic tombs transfer their life force to their master's body, perpetuating the priest's life and giving them a powerful undeath akin to Lichdom. While Mannimarco was performing these horrific yet brilliant acts of magic, Vanus Galerion formed his mages guild in the early Second Era. In its shadow, I believe Mannimarco secretly formed his own counter-organization, the Order of the Black Worm. Members of this cult are often branded with a black pentagram, which to me symbolizes the damnation of their souls. The order grew as Mannimarco recruited mages into cells called worm nests, each led by a worm anchorite who supervised other ranks like adepts, worm warriors, and thralls. New recruits were lured with promises of great power, and all were sworn to secrecy on pain of undeath. The anchorites reportedly communicated directly with Mannimarco, though how they did so isn't clear. If I had to guess, they probably used a form of ethereal telepathy, much like the Psijic Order. Some members, known as worm eremites, chose to become undead themselves and were always guarded by undead minions. As Archmage Galerion tried to destroy these cells, but Mannimarco proved to be incredibly sly in his recruitment. He targeted mages from within the guild, outcast witches, and reachman wizards for his illicit order. In most parts of Tamriel, necromancy was seen as an atrocity, but it seems many officials were susceptible to bribery and turned a blind eye as the order gained stronger footholds. It's telling to me that members of the Order reportedly never spoke Mannimarco's name aloud, referring to him only as the King of Worms. This, I think, established his position as the supreme necromancer, someone so far above them that they didn't dare use his name. Galerion blamed the Order for the rapid spread of soul gems and soul trapping. Soul trapping had been taught only to the most experienced Mages Guild members, both because of its potential for abuse and because it was technically a form of necromancy. Nevertheless, it became common knowledge among mages, which I see as part of the Order's plot to make necromancy seem more commonplace. Despite Galerion's efforts to ban soul trapping and ferret out the Order's cells, necromancy became an accepted and legally tolerated magical discipline in some parts of Tamriel, most notably Cyrodiil. During the Alliance War in Second Era 582, the Order assisted Mannimarco in his sinister plots across Tamriel. In doing so, they also aided Molag Bal, which is why I believe they were sometimes called a Daedric cult. When Empress Clivia Tharn fell under Mannimarco's influence, the Order was allowed to operate freely in Cyrodiil. With Mannimarco as the true power behind the throne, the Mages Guild was kicked out of the city, and the Order took its place in the Arcane University and as advisors to the Ruby Throne. From there, it seems their goal was to replace the Guild across the entire continent. Mannimarco's fascination with necromancy is obvious to me, but what were his motives with Molag Bal and the Plainmild? One of his followers, Vasteri, who was also a follower of Azura and Sotha Sil, allied with him over the shared goal of seeking to trap souls as one might capture Lesser Daedra. Vasteri went to Cold Arbor herself, believing that's where their objective lay. She would be the first to bring black soul gems from Cold Harbor to Tamriel. They were perfect for their ambitions, small, able to contain even the most willful souls, and seemingly indestructible. Vasteri tried to replicate black soul gems, but her aspirations soon clashed with Mannimarco's. To me, it's clear that Mannimarco wanted to use them for power, while Vasteri, as a follower of Azura, wanted to build upon them for ethical reasons. Fearing Mannimarco, Vasteri fled with her husband and continued to improve her creation. She eventually came up with the perfected Sigil Geode, an alternative to black soul gems. She intended to use it to communicate with the souls trapped inside for the knowledge they held. However, when she reported her findings to Vanus Galerion, his righteous nature was disgusted by it. It's said that sometime after her falling out with Vanus, she also achieved Lichdom and dedicated herself to Azura, though I find this part questionable. As for why Mannimarco didn't use the Sigil Geode, I can think of a few reasons. It might not have been as powerful as black soul gems, or perhaps the fact that the Sigil Geode was designed to be ethical and not inflict pain when against everything a Lich King like Mannimarco stood for, as his power clearly relied on souls created through intense pain. Although capable of storing black souls, the gems were dangerous, as bits of the caster's own soul could leak into them. It seems Mannimarco did many experiments with soul gems to achieve the effects of a black soul gem without the risk and lengthy process. Now, let me circle back to what I said earlier about becoming a Lich. To become a Lich and increase its power, a Necromancer needs to collect many souls, and the more painfully those souls are taken, the more powerful they become. This statement, in my opinion, aligns perfectly with the information Mannimarco gathered on the Soul Shriven. Soul Shriven are the remnants of people whose souls were stolen by a Daedric power and tormented until they break and become feral. The soul gems containing the essences of Soul Shriven are unlike any other. Their power can be used to create powerful enchantments or fuel potent spells. And if a Soul Shriven were to escape, their resentment and anger would cause the soul gem they are trapped in to grow even more powerful. So here's my big theory. I believe Mannimarco was fascinated with Molag Bal and tried to mantle him because of the immense potential Molag Bal's realm offered him as a necromancer. As we've established, necromancy is the manipulation of mortal souls and the reanimation of their bodies, and Molag Bal is literally known as the harvester of souls and the supposed creator of soul gems. The black soul gems needed for necromancy are found in Cold Harbor, Molag Bal's plane of Oblivion. But more than that, I think the real reason Mannimarco was fascinated with Molag Bal's realm was because the souls damned there create much more potent black soul gems than any other method. Furthermore, the Soul Shriven are incredibly durable thralls. They could sustain far greater injuries than a living creature and could work long past the point where a living slave would collapse. However, they are not invulnerable. The final death of a soul shriven results in its complete annihilation, so total that not even a trace of its essence can escape to Aetherius. And to add to the benefits of Cold Arbor, a soul destroyed in this manner empowers the domain's master even more. To me, this represents the absolute height of power Mannimarco could imagine. A plane of existence with the most enduring thralls, capable of creating the most powerful black soul gems, and where even their destruction benefits the master. Later, after the warp in the west, the Order of the Black Worm pioneered an easier way to create black soul gems using the rituals of the Revenant. We'll talk more about that in a later chapter. Aquilarios, also known as the Prophet and son of the Duke of Calovia, became Emperor of Cyrodiil by overthrowing Leovic, the last of the Longhouse Emperors, after Leovic had decriminalized Daedra worship. During his rule, however, I think the thought of being an illegitimate ruler deeply bothered him. Varen was not a true emperor because he wasn't dragonborn, a fact that clearly made him insecure. Mannimarco, in a brilliant move of manipulation, played on these insecurities. He convinced Varen that a modified coronation ritual could not only light the dragon fires but also persuade Akatosh to make him dragonborn, which would legitimize his rule as an emperor endorsed by the god of time himself. Varen then led the 5 companions on a toy-year quest to find the Amulet of Kings for the ritual. This group consisted of some of the greatest figures of that time: Lyris Titanborn, a Nord warrior with the blood of giants, who served as Varen's bodyguard; Sai-Sahan, the Red Guard captain of the Dragon Guard, charged with protecting the group; Abner Tharn, Chancellor of the Elder Council and Varen's advisor, who accompanied them as Imperial battlemage; and of course, Mannimarco himself. In Second Era 579, the 5 gathered at the Temple of the One in the Imperial City and began the ritual. It was only then, in that critical moment, that Varen learned the true extent of Mannimarco's deception. Mannimarco revealed his true allegiance. He was an agent of Molag Bal.
And as enemies rise faster than allies, salvation cannot come from one hero alone, but from many.
The ritual wouldn't reignite the dragon fires. In fact, I find it did the exact opposite. It weakened the ancient barriers protecting Nirn, setting the mortal realm adrift in oblivion, and causing the horrific event known as the Soulburst. This event allowed Molag Bal to begin the plane mold. As the Soulburst happened, magical aftershocks swept across Nirn. It said that mages worldwide died or went mad. Red Mountain trembled, earthquakes shook Skyrim, and terrible storms devastated the coasts of Elsewhere and Valenwood. The constellation of the Serpent grew so large it seemed to threaten all other star signs at once. Consumed by the Soulburst's fires, Varen Aquilarios vanished. He was declared dead, a fact Mannimarco used to frame Lyris Titanborn and Sai-Sahan for the Emperor's murder. Lyris was captured by Mannimarco, while Abner Tharn, in what I see as a desperate bid to preserve the Empire and himself, pledged allegiance to him. Sai-Sahan fled with the Amulet of Kings, hiding it in Sancre Tor, which only made the incrimination seem more legitimate.
So, we meet in person at long last. You look taller in your projection, and not a moment too soon. If I had to inspect one more bloody soul gem, I'd have thrown myself from the tower. A fair question. I know things that can help you. Here's a bit to whet your appetite. Mannimarco isn't doing any of this to serve Molag Bal. His ultimate plan is to out-scheme the god of schemes, and to replace him. The Amulet of Kings is the key to everything. Why do you think he kidnapped Sai-Sahan? He's torturing him, trying to get him to reveal the amulet's hiding place. Precisely. With the amulet at his command, Mannimarco believes he can trap Molag Bal's essence and absorb his power. He seeks to become a god himself.
After Mannimarco's betrayal, Tharn had no choice but to hand over control of the Empire to the King of Worms. To ensure Necromancy's dominance, Mannimarco immediately threw the Mages Guild out of the Imperial City and had any remaining dissenters arrested. To avoid execution, Tharn, slimy as ever in my opinion, pledged his loyalty to Mannimarco. In return, he was made steward of the Imperial City.
What? You son of a bitch!
Are you insane? Get away from me, you brutish she-troll!
Yes, stand down.
He's done nothing but lie to us from the beginning. I don't care what he says. He'll always be Mannimarco's toady.
Please, Mannimarco wants me dead. Did I pretend to capitulate to him? Yes, I did. Do you have any idea how many lives I saved by doing so?
The only thing you saved was your holdings in your own hide, you pompous ass!
His daughter Clivia, still the Empress Regent, became a ruler in name only, while Mannimarco was the true power behind the throne. Despite his position, however, Mannimarco had Abner Tharn locked away in Cold Harbor. He also turned Clivia against her father, luring her with promises of teaching her the dark arts to master life and death. In Second Era 582, Varen Aquilarios resurfaced as the prophet after being turned into a soul shriven in Cold Harbor.
Vestige, until now, you've only known me as the Prophet, but that is not my true name. I am Varen Aquilarius.
Our fallen emperor in the tattered robes of a moth priest, blind as a newborn kitten.
I am sorry I deceived you, Vestige.
With the help of the Vestige and Lyris Titanborn, he rescued Abner. In return, Abner told them where Sai Sahan was imprisoned in Cold Harbor. With the 5 companions reformed, they went to Cold Harbor, where Abner performed the same ritual that was used on Varen. This time, however, one of the companions had to sacrifice their life so Akatosh could empower the Vestige to defeat Molag Bal. Because Abner was the only one who knew the ritual, he couldn't be the one sacrificed. Ultimately, a sacrifice was made and the Playmeld was stopped, though we don't know for sure who it was. I believe it was likely Varen, as he was nearing the end of his mortal life anyway. After Molag Bal's defeat, Abner took the Amulet of Kings and fled to Cyrodiil. His greatest desire was to unite the warring territories under one banner. Although it was suspected Abner would try to use the amulet for this goal, its power had apparently been spent for at least a generation. Afterwards, the Tharn family, now the rulers of Cyrodiil through Varen's widow, Empress Regent Clivia Tharn, made a secret pact with Mannimarco.
No telling my secrets. Go to your room, Abner. I will deal with you shortly. Ah, dear Lyris. Your old position at the Foundry is still available. We'll even give you your own set of unbreakable chain.
He will not remain discorporated for long. His consciousness will be adrift for a few moments, but that is all. My estates, my titles, my own life, it's all forfeit now. All in the name of preserving the Empire. I swear by all the gods, Mannimarco will pay dearly for this.
It seems the King of Worms agreed to strengthen the Imperial armies by resurrecting their fallen soldiers. Abner, Clivia's father, developed a deep hatred for Mannimarco after the Soul Burst. He was soon taken to the castle of the Worm in Cold Harbor and imprisoned there again. Before the Soul Burst, after the fall of the Longhouse dynasty, Mannimarco had approached Ard Kadak of Markarth with a proposition. The rich folk were embittered by Varen's rise to power, as Durkarak's conquest of Cyrodiil and the rise of the Longhouse dynasty had been a point of pride for them. Mannimarco pledged justice for Kadak's people in exchange for giving the Worm cult shelter in Markarth. And eventually, Mannimarco delivered. Because of the Soulburst, Varen lost his throne, his lands, and as far as the Ard was concerned, his life. Following the Soulburst, Mannimarco spent a good amount of time in Markarth. He and his Worm cultists were given access to the ruins of Nuchwanzel by Ard Kadak, who was grateful for Varen's downfall. Kadak also gave him a large piece of land in the hills near Markarth for his experiments. There, Mannimarco performed a ritual to meld that land with Cold Harbor, but his attempt failed. The land was torn from Tamriel but didn't go to Cold Harbor either, instead becoming lost in between realms. However, I believe Mannimarco was able to use the knowledge from this failure to later initiate the plane meld with Molag Bal. This sundered land would become the lost realm of Greyhaven. Meanwhile, the 5 companions were reformed with the arrival of the prophesied Solace One, or the Vestige, who freed the companions from Molag Bal's clutches and reclaimed the Amulet of Kings, defeating Mannimarco in the process. The warp in the west is an event similar to a dragon break that I believe occurred due to the use of the Mantella on the Numidium. A dragon break is when the linear flow of time shatters, allowing multiple realities to happen at once, before merging back into a single timeline. It's compared to the Middle Dawn of the First Era, though its effects were localized to the Iliac Bay region, and it only lasted for a few days compared to the Middle Dawn, which is 1,008 years. The closest real-world equivalent I can think of for dragon breaks is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. This principle basically states that an infinite number of outcomes can occur when an event isn't being observed. It's only when we try to measure something that it takes on a specific form. So, if we were to scale this up, your cat in the next room is both tearing up the couch and bullying the dogs. It's only when you go look that you find it doing one of those things. I think you get the idea. The incident began on the 9th of Frostfall in 3rd Era 417 and lasted through the 11th. To some, the days seem to merge into one, with no explanation for the missing time. For others, events progressed much faster than those 3 days could account for. During the Imperial Simulacrum, the 10-year period when Jagar Tharn was impersonating the Emperor, there were reports of the cult searching for someone who knew how to find Spellbreaker and offering large sums for information on the Staff of Magnus. The Elder Scrolls Arena takes place during this whole period. The Order of the Black Worm became much more prominent in the events leading up to the warp in the West in 3rd Era 417, where I believe they were involved in various political schemes in the Iliac Bay area. They were based in Skorg Barrow, where Mannimarco plotted to get his hands on the Totem of Tiber Septim. Daggerfall had 6 different endings, which put Bethesda in a bit of a bind when developing Morrowind. They needed a canon ending, but didn't want to choose just one. So they decided all the endings would become canon. They did this by introducing a new literary device, a dragon break. In lore terms, a dragon break happens when the fabric of time is broken and time branches off. When this happens, multiple realities occur simultaneously. At the end of the break, all these realities converge again.
Is hurled from Aetherius, and although drawn to the empty chest of great Numidium, the will of the King of Worms commands us to his side. With his power, the King of Worms leaves his mortal frame and joins the ranks of the gods in Oblivion.
Daggerfall has 6 endings, and this is how I understand them. If the player activates the Mantella themselves with the totem, the Numidium kills the player, goes haywire, and is destroyed by Imperial forces. If the player gives the Mantella to the Underking, he absorbs its power, finally finds rest, and creates a large, magicka-free area around himself. If Gortwerg wins, he uses the Numidium to crush the Imperial forces and the Bay Kings. Then the Underking then arrives to destroy the Numidium for good, losing his own life in the process. Gortwerg then succeeds in creating the Orc Kingdom of Orsinium. If the Blades win, they recreate the Numidium and use it to defeat the Bay Kings and the Orcs, uniting all of Tamriel under the Empire once more. If one of the Bay Kings wins, they use the Numidium to defeat all the other kings before the Underking destroys both it and himself. And, most importantly for us, if Mannimarco gets the Mantella, he uses it to become a god. Following the warp, the Order no longer saw Mannimarco as the King of Worms. To them, he had become the God of Worms. They came to believe that he had ascended to become the Necromancer's moon, or the Revenant, and that he would save them from the day of reckoning. They built altars that, when hit by the light of the Necromancer's moon, could turn grand soul gems into black ones, capable of trapping the souls of sentient mortals. Arkay, in my view, is the ultimate arch-nemesis of Mannimarco and all necromancers. Arkay's blessing prevents the souls of men, beastmen, and elves from being used without their consent. Arkay's law stops those buried with the proper rituals from being raised to serve necromancers. As Mannimarco himself might say, Arkay's blessing can be bent by the daring, but Arkay's law is absolute. The necromancer's moon eclipses the planet Arkay every 8 days, blocking its light from reaching Nirn for 24 hours and thus negating Arkay's control over the dead. This celestial event is known as the Shade of the Revenant and casts a purple light on certain places across Tamriel. The purpose of this eclipse, as I see it, is to subvert Arkay's divine laws, allowing Mannimarco to be the sole god of life and death. The cult of the Black Worm worships Mannimarco as the god of worms and builds altars in these locations to harness the shade of the Revenant to create black soul gems. Why Mannimarco became a moon instead of a planet like the Edra, or why he didn't just ascend to Oblivion, is a bit of a mystery. But let me offer my theory. I think the Tribunal and Dagoth didn't get their own moons or planes because they weren't proper gods. They were just siphoning divine energy from the heart of a real god. Plus, I don't believe having a celestial form is a requirement for godhood. I think Mannimarco got a moon because he became more like an Edra than a Daedra, ruling over the unnatural laws of necromancy in direct opposition to Arkay, the god of the natural cycle of life and death. During the Warp in the West, a series of paradoxical events occurred throughout the Iliac Bay. Many factions tried to get the Totem of Tiber Septim, resulting in a time distortion where they all simultaneously succeeded to some degree. This, I believe, explains all the different endings of Daggerfall. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most significant outcomes of this event was Mannimarco's successful apotheosis, which resulted in the creation of the Necromancer's moon. The Numidium seems to have vanished from Tamriel during the Miracle of Peace, the time after the Warp, and the Underking hasn't been seen since either. I've heard rumors that they were both annihilated when the Underking reclaimed his heart, the mantella that controls the Numidium, and that an anti-magic area was created as a result, though its exact location is unknown. The mysterious agent who found the totem is also said to have disappeared in the chaos. Mannimarco is said to have experienced the infamous dragon break of the Middle Dawn. During this time, he apparently learned something he calls his mystery from the Maracati Selectives. There's a passage by Mannimarco in the book. Where were you when the dragon broke? The 3 thieves of Morrowind could tell you where they were. So could the High King of Alinor, who was the one who broke it in the first place. As for myself, I was here and there and here again, like the rest of the mortals during the dragon break. How do you think I learned my mystery? The Maracati Selectives showed us all the glories of the dawn so that we might learn, simply, as above, so below. If Mannimarco learned his mystery from the Selectives as he claims, then it seems to me he has been plotting to become a god for a very, very long time. The Selectives had been gone for over 1,000 years by the time of the Plane Meld. So Mannimarco must have been sitting on that knowledge for quite a while. Some scholars believe that when Mannimarco achieved godhood, he split in 2, with his mortal counterpart cast back down to Nirn and his metaphysical self remaining as the Necromancer's moon. The key lesson Mannimarco learned from the Selectives, I think, was the core tenet of Hermetic magic, the sympathetic principle of as above, so below, which informs everything from astrology to voodoo dolls. It's the act of changing things in the heavens to affect things everywhere else.
I see Bolor was unsuccessful in delaying you. Very well. I shall reanimate him once we are done here. Perhaps we shall chat for a while, since you really have no other options. I must say, I expected Archmage Traven, rather than his star pupil. I am disappointed to see that he could not face me himself. I have met so many of his predecessors over the years. I developed a particular fondness for Galerion, ill-preserved though he may be. But here you are instead, skilled enough to make it this far, which speaks volumes about you. Perhaps you'll be as useful to me as Traven would. Oh, my dear, I didn't mean to imply that you have a choice. I will make you another in a long tradition of worm thralls, and take my time in studying you. Your very soul will be forfeit to me. Power, my dear friend. I seek power, and so I acquire and study those who have some degree of it. We are after the same things, your guild and I. Yet you worry about good and evil, and do not accept they are manifestations of the same thing. So you brand me a villain, and make vain attempts to destroy me. I watch, and I wait, and I collect you when you come for me. Instead of drawing Traven out, I have received you instead. Perhaps I shall personally go and collect him when we are done here.
During the Oblivion crisis, Mannimarco decided to destroy the Mages Guild, where he appears as a normal mortal. The leader of the Mages Guild, Archmage Hannibal Traven, sacrificed himself, putting his own soul into a great soul gem. Traven created a trap that would weaken Mannimarco for a limited time if he tried to use the soul gem. The trap worked. Mannimarco was greatly weakened and was eventually killed by an agent of the Mages Guild. But it's my belief that this person could have just been a pretender and not the real Mannimarco, or at least just an aspect or avatar of him. And so the curtain falls not on a man, but on a monument to ambition. Mannimarco's story, a journey from Psijic prodigy to a literal god orbiting the world, is a testament to what a singular, brilliant will can achieve when untethered from morality. He may be one of the vilest souls to have ever walked Mundus. But I have to admit, his brilliance is a thing of terrible beauty. The debate still rages, of course, on whether he truly achieved divinity in the chaos of the Dragon Break. It's also heavily contested whether the Mannimarco seen during the Oblivion crisis was the same one who rose to power during the Plane Meld. But what I know for certain is that Mannimarco's power was a true blight upon Tamriel. The fact that his existence led to the deaths of thousands throughout history is, for me, a testament to both his immense power and his profound evil. So, as we stand at the end, I have to ask, is Mannimarco's ambition finally sated? Has he achieved everything he ever wanted, or is there more to his grand design than we could ever know? Because for those who hunger for power, I believe there is always more to acquire, always more control to be had. And that is it for the video. Please like and subscribe. If you like this content, this helps me out a lot. And for those who do not know, this is my second channel I started specifically to post Elder Scrolls contents. On my main channel, you can find a lot of Elden Ring lore contents. In any case, I find it so cozy and at home while talking about Elder Scrolls. Thank you so much if you made it to the end. May Talos guide you on your quest.
And once again, thank you for being here. Be kind to yourself, and I'll see you on the next one.